What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lighting Lamp Podcast. I am here by myself, flying solo today, and I'm just going to be recapping the second round series and talking about a little bit of the conference finals that are going on as well. So let's just jump right into it. We'll start with the Tampa Bay Lightning sweeping the Florida Panthers in 4 games, score of 4-1, 2-1, 5-1, and 2-0. Incredibly disappointing series from the Florida Panthers. I mean, obviously, look, I picked the Florida Panthers to win the Stanley Cup, which means that I had a lot of expectations for them kind of coming into this series. But even if they would have lost in, respectable way, like a 7-game series with the back-to-back champs, I think you could mark that as progress for this team. Because realistically speaking, this team was built to win this year and is in a win-now mode, very obviously. Management's in a win-now mode. The roster is ready to compete, ready to make waves in the playoffs. And, okay, you pulled the back-to-back champs in round 2. That's kind of rough. But to go out in 4 games, nothing was going right for them. Their power play sucked. Their penalty kill sucked. And Tampa Bay, once game 6 hit and Tampa Bay won in overtime of the first series. The first 6 games, the Lightning did not look like the same Tampa Bay Lightning that we've seen for the past 2 playoff runs. Game 7 was that same team. Shut down, lock you out, get their chances, be opportunistic, and overall just playing like a team that knows how to win series. That's that transition from Game 6 to Game 7. I don't know what John Cooper said. I don't know what they changed, but they looked like the back-to-back champs from Game 7 on, and this series really kind of made it look like, yeah, this team is obviously the real deal in Tampa Bay. So from the Florida Panthers perspective, though, I mean, they really didn't even put up much of a fight. The only games that were close was games 2 and 4, a 2-1 loss and a 2-0 loss. But to score 3 goals in 4 games is not going to get it done. And I think, honestly, if we're honest with ourselves here, this series was the one thing I was worried about with the Florida Panthers, which is the coaching staff. The coaching staff is young, inexperienced. A lot of them don't really have a lot of deep playoff runs under their belt, specifically Andrew Burnett behind the bench. And he got outcoached. He got outcoached pretty badly. I mean, look, when your power play is as bad as it was against the Washington Capitals, there's no reason why nothing was changed. And, okay, you changed personnel, great, but the setup and the play was being run the same exact way. Florida was trying to force everything to the point. Their offense was trying to be generated through their point men. And look, I get it. You have fantastic defensemen in Florida, some of them who can really put up some great offensive numbers. I totally understand why you try running your power play through the point. But when it's not working, when other teams have keyed up on that and they're just absolutely making the middle of the rink a quagmire of bodies, so you can't get the pucks through to the net from the point, so you can't get those tips and deflections, you've got to try something else. Lo and behold, the one power play goal the Florida Panthers scored all series and all playoffs was the one time they fed the puck down low, got it to the half boards, chipped it down below the goal line, and kicked it out to the bumper. And that's the one goal they scored on the power play. Immediately, the next power play, the play went right back up to the top of the point, and everything was fed through the top. And that, to me, just shows inexperience with coaching, a coaching staff that's in over its head. And it's unfortunate because the Panthers really had a great team, and they should have put up more of a fight than this. And the adjustments just weren't there. The line blender didn't come out until it was way too late and didn't even matter anymore. Things just didn't get changed in a way that made sense. And the special teams completely fell apart. So A very disappointing year for the Florida Panthers. I mean, realistically, anything short of an Eastern Conference Finals would have been a little bit disappointing. But if you go out in 7 games to the back-to-back champs, you're like, okay, they're the back-to-back champs for a reason. Respectable. We lost to the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. I can see why. But going out in 4 games when it really never even felt like you were in any of these games for the most part is pretty rough. So complete failure, in my opinion, for the Florida Panthers. I think you run it back next year with Andrew Burnett, but if you're finding that you're getting outcoached again and again and again, then maybe you start to look for an experienced professional. And again, it's not Andrew Burnett's fault that he doesn't have the experience, but this is not a team where you can kind of take the next 3 years to learn how to coach in the playoffs. They should be more effective and winning now. John Cooper in the Tampa Bay Lightning, he got swept in the first round. Next year he came back, won a Stanley Cup. So we'll see what kind of adjustments Andrew Burnett can make. I think you run it with him next year, but if you're finding that it's a noticeable issue where you're getting handedly outcoached, you might look to change things up behind the bench. So disappointing for the Florida Panthers, and Tampa Bay Lightning move on to round 3 to face the New York Rangers. And speaking of disappointments, man, Carolina, jeez, dude. I mean, what more can you say about the Carolina Hurricanes other than this is probably one of the most disappointing playoff runs I've seen from them in quite a long time. I mean, you go up 2 games to nothing on the New York Rangers with a chance to steal one on the road, break the funk of losing all your games on the road, and go up 3-1 back home. You don't do that. You win Game 6, you're up 3-2. You have 2 games to win 1 game, and one of those is at home where you've been playing great all playoffs, and you drop the next 2, lose the series. I mean, what more is there to really do in Carolina at this point? I'm not taking anything away from the New York Rangers. I think the Rangers deserved to win this series. I really do. The way they played in those first 2 games on the road, I genuinely thought that the Rangers probably deserved to win those 2 games on the road. Games 1 and 2, I thought they were the better team. So realistically, the fact that the Hurricanes were up 2-0 was kind of fortuitous to begin with. And then, look, bottom line is, if you can't win on the road in the playoffs, I don't care if you have home ice, because you're risking it way too much. You're leaving everything to chance that you're just going to win at home. You cannot go 0 for 7 on the road and expect to win in the playoffs. It's not going to happen. Because what? You're just going to bank on winning Game 7 every time? I mean, it was genuinely frustrating to me as a hockey fan to watch the Carolina Hurricanes play in these playoffs. Because here's a team that has had a couple of playoff runs where they're making it to the second round. You're thinking, okay, this is the year, right? They can break this funk. They've got I'm not going to say a fortuitous matchup against the New York Rangers, but they didn't pull a team like Tampa Bay in round 2. You're not playing the Florida Panthers or the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 2. You're not playing, the Colorado Avalanche in round 2. You're playing the New York Rangers, who are a team that on paper you should beat. On paper. And you come out here and you just completely, every time your skates touch the ice on the road, you're just laying eggs. 3-1 loss, 4-1 loss, 5-2 loss. I mean, and you're not even winning all that convincingly at home. 2-1 in overtime, 2-0, 3-1. You're getting absolutely slammed on the road. And this goes back to the Bruins series. You're getting bullied on the road. And then you're coming home and you're scraping out wins by the skin of your teeth. It was just so frustrating. And I'm honestly kind of glad that the Hurricanes lost. I think the Lightning and the Rangers is a much more compelling series than the Lightning and the Hurricanes, given the way that the Hurricanes have been playing this playoffs. I would have told you at the start of the playoffs that Lightning Hurricanes would have been a really, really fun, active, electrifying series. But seeing the way that they played against the Bruins and then seeing the way that they were playing against the Rangers, just so uncompelling, so not convincing in any real meaningful way. And I don't want to hear any of this crap about, Antti Ranta and, Freddie Anderson being hurt. I get it, right? Have the Rangers been getting pretty lucky through these playoffs? I mean, yeah, they haven't faced a starting goaltender up until they're playing in on Andre Vasilevsky in round three. That's lucky. I mean, well, bottom line, it is what it is, right? The Rangers got to play against Louis Domingue for 6 games of their series against the Penguins. Basically 7 because Louis played more than half of game 3 or game 1. So they got to face a third stringer, and then they got to face Antti Raanta. So, sure, call it what it is. The Rangers got lucky. But that being said, the Hurricanes absolutely did not do themselves any favors in this series. I mean, Raanta was not the problem. You know, in some of these games on the road, could he have had a couple he wanted back? Sure. But when you're a team that on paper that's as good as the Hurricanes are, you should be able to win one of these games on the strength of your core. I mean, Ranta's really the only reason that the Hurricanes won the games they won. He let in 1 goal, 0 goals, and then 1 goal in the 3 games that they won. And then in game 3, I'm pretty sure he only let in 2, and it was an empty netter. So what more could you possibly want from the guy? It was a very annoying series because I was kind of excited to see the Hurricanes play the Rangers. You know, I thought it was okay. The Hurricanes can skate with the Rangers better than the Penguins can, and the Hurricanes can defend better than the Penguins can. So this should be a tight series. It'll be active. It'll be fun. It'll be exciting to see the high-flying offensive New York Rangers go against Carolina Hurricanes. And it was exciting to an extent, but it kind of also just felt like, really, this is what we're doing again? We're just going to win every game. The Hurricanes are just going to win every game at home and then just completely lay an egg on the road. Like, why am I even watching these road games at this point? And I think this kind of brings up the question of what is wrong here, because it's not the goaltending. You could argue maybe Freddie would have found a way to stall one of those games on the road, but the Hurricanes were complete garbage. You scored 1 and 2 goals on your road games. That's not going to get it done. I don't think Freddie really would have made that much of a difference at all. So I don't think it's that. They really didn't have any major injuries you could really point to. I think that, we have to start questioning why this roster can't get it done. And obviously the first person that's going to get a finger pointed at them is Rod Brind'Amour. I don't think that's fair, but I do think it is a question that we maybe have to start asking. I don't think that this series necessarily was on Rod Brind'Amour's shoulders, but he is the coach, and you go 0 for 7 on the road and then ultimately lose game 7 at home 6-2. Another year where you're out in the second round. And it's not like your one major injury in Freddie Anderson really impacted anything. There needs to be some scrutiny there. Again, I think Rod Brind'Amour is one of the best coaches in the entire NHL. He's a top 5 coach for sure. But I think it's fair for us to start questioning why this Carolina Hurricanes team just cannot get it done. And obviously he's the first person to get looked at because coaches in the NHL are hired specifically to be fired. And I think that's something we have to look at for next year. You can point to some other things. The defense was kind of cobbled together after losing Hamilton. It was kind of piecemealed. The offense this series wasn't all that great in a lot of ways. Maybe you don't have like an elite goal scorer. You don't have an Austin Matthews, Alex Ovechkin, Vladimir Tarasenko type player on this team. Maybe that's something you have to consider. But who knows? There's a lot of soul searching to be done in Carolina because this team, you don't want to just turn into the next, the Eastern Conference Minnesota Wild, where every year you're good in the regular season and then you get knocked out in the second round. And for the Rangers, from the Rangers' perspective, they played them close. They played them tight. They did what they had to do to set up a Game 7 win, and they did. They won big in Carolina. Igor Shesterkin was much, much better this series than he was at any point, really, against the Pittsburgh Penguins. He looked like he was back. He looked like he was the Igor that we know and come to expect every night. And the bottom line is, when the chips were down, they came back to win again. This team is proving that you can't count them out until that final whistle goes and they lose a series. As long as there's still time on the clock, you can't count this team out. I think that the blame for or the blame slash props to winning slash losing this series, I think is split kind of evenly 50-50. I think I'm going to give 50% credit to New York Rangers for doing what they had to do to win. And honestly, on most nights, they looked better than the Hurricanes. And I genuinely thought that they deserved to win this series. So props to them, obviously, for getting it done and doing what they had to do to win. And 50% of the blame just goes for the Hurricanes for another just uncompelling, just mediocre playoff run, and losing in really an embarrassing fashion. I mean, you lose 5-2, then 6-2 till drops game 6 and 7. Yikes. So we'll see what happens to Carolina, but something's got to change. Over to the Calgary Flames Edmonton Oilers. Boy, this was a dud of a playoff series. The Battle of Alberta. Here comes the Calgary Flames to play the Edmonton Oilers. Calgary comes out with a 9-6 win in game 1. And then Edmonton rattles off 4 straight 5-3, 4-1, 5-3, 5-4. And GG, Calgary goes home. Man, I don't even know what to say about this series. I mean, let me address the elephant in the room. Game 5 was some of the worst officiating I've ever seen in my life. And in my eyes, it was heavily geared towards the Edmonton Oilers. But before you get the pitchforks out and start being like, rah, 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 Calgary didn't do themselves any favors. You're down 3-1. And you're going to the Edmonton, or you're going home to the Saddle Dome down 3-1. You put yourself in this position. And it really wasn't much of anything that the Oilers were kind of doing. As a team, I should say. This series was the best player in the world being the best player in the world. Connor McDavid, more or less this entire series, pretty much did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, at will, along with Leon Draisaitl to help him out. And I gotta say, for Calgary, it was pretty embarrassing at some points. I mean, the LA Kings pushed Connor McDavid to 7 games. The LA Kings found a way to at least limit McDavid's effectiveness enough to drag this series to 7 games. I mean, yes, they had those back-to-back games where it was 6-0 and 8-2, and Edmonton just blew the LA Kings out of the water. But the other games, LA found a way. You're never going to shut Connor McDavid out, and you're never going to completely clamp him down, but they found a way to limit him and bottle him and Draisaitl up enough to the point where the damage they were doing was able to be compensated for by the rest of the team in a way that forced a Game 7 that Edmonton only barely won 2-0. So if the LA Kings can do that, there is no excuse why a more veteran, better defensive, better goaltended, and better coached team in Calgary got steamrolled by him. And I'm giving full credit to Connor McDavid because dude is absolutely, bar none, far and away, the best hockey player in skates right now. Genuinely. There's nobody really that even comes close. I mean, you could argue that Draisaitl is close, but I think if we were doing a tier list, to bring a little video game knowledge into this, Connor McDavid is in his own class. I mean, the things that this guy does are unreal. So all of that to say, there are ways to beat the Edmonton Oilers by limiting how much damage you can do. If you can limit him and Draisaitl to like 6 points each, a goal and 2 assists, or 2 goals and an assist each, you give them, between the two of them, if you limit them to 3 goals, and maybe even 2 goals between the two of them, you're putting yourself in a chance to succeed. And the Calgary Flames just did not do that at all. And this was a series that really, on paper, the Flames should have won. And not only did the Flames lose, you lost 4 in a row, and it really wasn't close most nights. Like, yeah, the scores are close. When you're watching these games, you're like, every time McDavid is touching the puck, it's in the back of the net. This does not even feel like it's close. It feels like a blowout, even though it's a 2-goal game. And it's another year where the Calgary Flames come out and just lay a complete dud in the playoffs. I mean, them and the Hurricanes have proven just over and over again that the calendar flips to playoffs and you just can't rely on this team. So, what does it really mean for the Flames? It means that your game plan didn't work and you got run over by the best player in the world. Do I think they need to make any roster changes? No, not really. I mean, obviously, number one, you've got to retain Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, you cannot give up his 100 and something, whatever points. Can't do that because you need his offense. That's priority number one. And as far as what you need to add on this team, I really don't think there's all that much you can improve on drastically. Maybe you can go out and find yourself, again, similar to the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe you can go out and find yourself a bona fide elite goal scorer, somebody whose only job is to put pucks in the back of the net, like an Ovechkin or a Matthews or a Stamkos, right? A guy that you're listen, if I don't care if you put up 10 assists all year, just go out and score me 35 goals. Someone like that, because as many goal scorers as this team has, obviously Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, Elias Lindholm, Andrew Mangiapane, they're not pure goal scorers where they're just scoring off the strength of their own shot necessarily. They have to put in a lot of work to get the goals that they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the only thing I can really think of. Maybe pick up a top four defenseman. I mean, the rest of this team is completely fine. It's just mind-boggling to me to watch that series with the LA Kings go 7 and then to see the Calgary Flames go on 5. So, yeah, I don't know. Disappointing year for Calgary. Great job by Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Absolutely just said, hop on, boys. We're going to the conference finals. So fantastic work to those two. Absolutely electrifying every time they were touching the ice. So great work by those two. And then we have the Colorado Avalanche, St. Louis Blues, which the Avs won in 6 by scores of 3-2 for Avs in Game 1, 4-1 for the Blues in Game 2, 5-2 for the Avs in Game 3, 6-3 for the Avs in Game 4, 5-4 in overtime for the Blues in Game 5, and 3-2 in Game 6. And the Avalanche take that series in 6. A lot of controversy in this series. I mean, obviously, the thing with Nazem Kadri and Jordan Binnington didn't help a lot of the issues with the Blues. And could you argue that potentially Jordan Binnington would have made this a very, very different series? I mean, sure. No offense to Ville Husso, but Binnington was playing absolutely lights out red hot. So it sucks to lose a goaltender like that to a completely unfortunate incident, I'll say. That being said, the Blues really did not help themselves at all. I mean, you could see that their heads were out of it, and the fact that they were just so hell-bent on getting revenge on Nazem Kadri instead of worrying about playing the game, they lost the mental battle. I mean, Kadri was still out scoring goals, doing his thing, being a pest, being a nuisance, putting up big numbers, and St. Louis just looked lost. They looked angry. They were running around a lot. They were starting a lot of fights and taking too many penalties, and you do not want to put the Colorado Avalanche on a power play at all if you can avoid it, let alone off of some dumb vigilante kind of justice situation because you felt like Kadri didn't get what he deserved. Ultimately, I think it cost him the series. That being said, though, I think that this was a respectable showing, all things considered, for the St. Louis Blues. The Avs, just a super powerhouse this year. You lose your starting goaltender. You still push it to 6 games. You were down 3-1. You force a Game 5, which you win. Then you force a Game 6. And you only lost by 1 goal. I think all things considered, this was a very, very well fought series. And I think that really St. Louis has nothing to really change. I mean, you know, you got beat by Nathan MacKinnon. You got beat by, unfortunately, losing your starting goaltender. There's not really much you could have done there. And you still put up a respectable fight. I think you run it back next year with the same team. Maybe you could upgrade a few pieces here and there. You're still kind of feeling the loss of Alex Pietrangelo, which obviously is a huge loss. I think, there's rumors that they're going to let Ville Husso walk, which I think is fine if you do that, as long as you go out and get yourself a competent backup, because Binnington has proven that he can hit the skids sometimes and have a real hard time consistency-wise in a regular season. So, I think you go out and get yourself a backup goaltender. I think you keep most of this team together. Now you just run it back next year, because I really don't think there's much wrong with this roster. I think it's a pretty complete roster. Just an unfortunate incident that kind of marred an otherwise pretty competitive series. So the Colorado Avalanche move on to face the Oilers in the Western Conference Finals. So I guess we'll start there. As of recording this, Game 1 has been played and Game 2 is being played tonight. Game 1, an 8-6 win for the Colorado Avalanche. Pretty much par for the course of what you expected in this series. Goaltenders and defense completely irrelevant, really, in this kind of series. This really feels like a last goal wins situation, Do I think they'll keep up an 8-6 pace? No. But I certainly expect this to be a very high-scoring series. I mean, you've got probably the two best offenses in the NHL. Maybe the top three, because you probably put the Toronto Maple Leafs in there somewhere. But, you've got two, I'll say top five to be conservative, but probably top three offenses in the NHL going after each other with, I'll say, average to slightly above average in one particular case. Darcy Kemper, I think, is an above average goaltender. Average goaltending, defenses that aren't really geared for defense, so to speak, necessarily. So, yeah, 8-6 sounds about right. An unfortunate incident, some unfortunate news for the Colorado Avalanche. Darcy Kemper is out. Took a puck to the mask, pretty hard shot, and then ended up pulling himself from the game. Said his vision started to go blurry, so that's definitely rough for the Colorado Avalanche. Unfortunate that had to occur, but Pavel Francouz came in, made some big saves towards the end of Game 1 and got the win. Mike Smith getting pulled in Game 1. Mikko Koskinen comes in, plays pretty well. Kind of surprised that they're not going to start Koskinen in this game. But Mike Smith is back in net to start Game 2. Man, again, this kind of feels like last goal wins. And if I had to bet money, it'd be rough to bet money on this series, because with Darcy Kemper in the net, I feel relatively good about saying that the Colorado Avalanche can win this series kind of handedly, really. But minus Darcy Kemper, that's tough. No offense to Pavel Francouz, but he's not on the same level that Kemper is, so we'll see how he can play. Colorado clearly showing in this series, when you look at ice time, Cale Makar, Devon Toews, and Bowen Byram, the three good defense above 20 minutes. Cale Makar and Devon Toews played 27 and 24 minutes respectively. And your best defensive defenseman in Josh Manson, Jack Johnson, they played 14 and 12 minutes. Eric Johnson played 18 minutes, almost 19, so clearly the Colorado Avalanche just solely relying on the strength of their offense to get this done, which, in this series, maybe that's just the way they need to go. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Nathan MacKinnon looks like he's a man on a mission, but so is Connor McDavid. So is Leon Draisaitl. So It's an exciting series. I'm excited to watch it. Obviously, these games I expect to be more in the realm of like 5-4 and maybe like a 6-5, but not necessarily getting up to 8-6 again. But we'll see. Again, really kind of feels like a last goal wins, and you never want to stop scoring because Colorado went up 7-3, and then Edmonton rattled off 3 straight goals to make it a 1-goal game late, and yeah, it was close. So we'll see who comes out on that. I would say I think the Avalanche will win, but without Darcy Kemper, that's going to be a rough pull. So we'll see what happens there. And on the other side of the country, we have the New York Rangers taking on Tampa Bay Lightning. New York coming away with a 6-2 win in Game 1. Nothing unexpected, I would say. Game 1, the Lightning haven't played a game in over a week to that point after sweeping the Florida Panthers. The Rangers coming off an emotional 7-game series. They're riding hot. They're playing hot. Not totally unexpected to see the Rangers coming out with a big win in Game 1. I do expect the rest of this series to settle down more into the 2-1, 3-2 goal range. And I do expect the Lightning to come out on top. Again, no offense to New York Rangers. I think that this has been a complete to top to bottom 100% success from every level of the organization. To make the playoffs as capably as you did. B, to come back down from 3-1. C, to knock out the Carolina Hurricanes. And D, to even make the Eastern Conference Finals. All of that is great. But then you look at the other minutia that's getting developed. Igor Shesterkin is proving he can play in the playoffs. The kid line, Filipino and Alexis Lafreniere and somewhat Capo Caco, we'll say somewhat, but specifically Lafreniere and Hedl, completely different players in the playoffs. They look absolutely fantastic, which is something that the Rangers have needed. We've been talking about on this podcast, potentially the idea that if those kids don't develop, the Rangers need to look into more veteran options to shore up some of these holes. And it's looking like that's not really going to be the case. Caco's still kind of a question mark. He's not playing all that great. But Hedl and Laff look amazing. Adam Fox has proven he can play in the playoffs. Ryan Lindgren. Keandre Miller's had some struggles here and there. But he's growing with every game. The proof of concept, that proving that, okay, we needed to get bigger, we needed to get tougher, we needed to get stronger. All of that leading to you making the Eastern Conference Finals and winning Game 1 in a pretty convincing fashion. Complete top-to-bottom success for the New York Rangers. Straight up, right? All of that to say, I still expect the Lightning to come out on top just because at pretty much every position the Lightning are slightly better than the New York Rangers. And one big key thing is the veterancy, right? This is where the chips get thrown down. This is where you prove you have to know how to play. And the way that the Lightning have been playing, if they can get back to that form, if we get the game 1-6 in the first round, Lightning, I think the Rangers would beat that team, not easily, but in a convincing fashion, right? Maybe a 6-game series. If we get the Lightning from Game 7 of the Toronto Maple Leaf series and then Games 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Florida Panthers series, that's going to be a rough draw for the Rangers because they're going to be able to do the exact things that the Rangers don't want to do, which is slow the game down and play those tight, close games. The games that the Rangers have been winning in these playoffs have generally been the higher scoring affairs. And the games they've been losing have generally been the lower scoring affairs. So they don't want to play those 2-1, 3-2 games against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they didn't. Game 1, they come out, they win 6-2 convincingly. Really didn't ever feel like Tampa was in this game. Once the second period started, the Rangers kind of ran away with it. Again, not unexpected. I think Game 2 and on here is going to be the real gut check for this Tampa Bay Lightning team. Are you still the back-to-back champions? Or are you going to go out like complete fools and busters in round 3? Remains to be seen. If I think either team will feel okay about losing this series. The Lightning would be disappointed certainly to lose to a younger team, uh, making their first real playoff run. But to go to the Eastern Conference Finals for a third consecutive year, uh, you can't win a cup every year if the Lightning lose. I think they'd be disappointed, but it's not a failure of a year. And really, anything beyond the first round for the New York Rangers was complete extra credit. And the fact that they're even here is a resounding and complete and total success. A fantastic year for this team. So it's going to be an interesting series. Could I see the Rangers winning? I mean, yeah, certainly. I mean, again, if the Lightning want to play this rush style game, I mean, game one was really weird. The Lightning were just leaving players open left, right, and center. Like, you could tell that they were slow. They weren't taking that step to the puck. They weren't making that play. They weren't getting out to challenge those shooters. They were slow. A lot of 2-on-1s, a lot of odd man rushes for the Rangers. So if the Lightning want to play that game against the Rangers, where they're just going to give them opportunity because they're not afraid of them, yeah, you're going to lose that game because the Rangers are not going to miss a lot of those opportunities. So could I see the Rangers winning? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got this far for a reason. They have a fantastic team. I think, going into this playoffs, I would have told you that they were just a good team. But the fact that a lot of their role players and depth players like, Philip Hedl and Alexei Lafreniere, and not Vinny Trocheck. He scored a goal in game one. Let me pull up the... hold on, guys. Frank Vetrano. The fact that these guys are stepping up and making these plays, I mean, the Rangers have a great team. I mean, the fact that they had those guys who take that extra step in the playoffs pushed them from good to great. And so, yeah, I mean, the Rangers are the real deal. I mean, they're built to win in a sense that they got bigger, they got tougher, they got deeper, they got meaner. They made those necessary adjustments. They're built to win in the playoffs. And it's kind of a proof of concept, right, for the rest of the NHL, teams like Toronto. I can't really talk too much smack about the Oilers right now, I guess, because they're in the Western Conference Finals. But I still think that they need to kind of take notes on this. Kind of a little fortuitous. Let's just say that. A little fortuitous. I think even Oilers fans would agree that playing the LA Kings in round one was way harder than it should have been, and they probably should have just steamrolled them. So a little bit of a fortuitous bracket. But, Toronto specifically, take notes. This is how you build a team. Edmonton, I would even say Edmonton still needs to take notes because if they had to play maybe some stiffer competition in round one before they really got the gears turning, they probably would be home right now. And they still can't defend, so there's that. But, yeah, I expect the Avalanche and the Lightning to win their series. Would I bet money on either one? No, probably not. Way too close, way too unpredictable with the Colorado Avalanche, Edmonton Oilers. You never know what's going to happen in that series. And the Rangers are playing white hot right now, so that's dangerous for a team like Tampa, who's coming off such a long rest. They could get pretty overwhelmed and go down pretty hard in this series if they're not ready to get those gears back going. So, yeah, that'll be all for this. I guess me and Steve will probably do an episode maybe after this series each kind of reach around a halfway mark. We'll come back, we'll talk, and yeah. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys again next time.